It's now time for the Billy C. Show, part of the BillyCBoxing.com network.
And we're coming to you live from the Billy C Studios in Lake George, New York. I'm Bill Calogero, and it's time for the Billy C Show. Good morning, good day, good evening, whenever you're watching, whenever you're listening. I hope you're doing okay today. Today's show is being brought to us in part by, if you've been watching or listening to the show for any length of time, you know what it is. It's been brought to you in part by my book, Tom Molino, From Bondage to Baddest Man on the Planet, is available right now where all good books are sold. And you can get a copy of this book right now while you're watching or listening to this show. Just visit Amazon.com. You can visit BarnesandNoble.com. Or if you're looking to get a signed copy, just drop me an email, Billy at Talkin' Boxing. That's TalkinBoxing.com. Today's show is also being brought to us in part by the website, BillyCBoxing.com. Check it out for all the latest and greatest boxing news that you may not see other places. So check it out, BillyCBoxing.com, and you'll also get up-to-date news on this show. Today's show is also being brought to us in part by the Blackett Shopping Network. Check it out. Only if you want to buy stuff and save tons of money. Just visit our website, BillyCBoxing.com, and click on the Blackett Shopping Network banner. And finally, today's show is being brought to us in part by the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame induction weekend, which is taking place June 20th through the 22nd in beautiful Tampa, St. Pete, Florida area. I am honored to be part of the 2025 class, and I'm going to be there, and I want you to join me too, because if it wasn't for you guys, there's no way I would have been able to get in. It's going to be a great weekend, nonstop stuff going on. Please, come on down, enjoy the weather, enjoy all the other inductees, and hang out with me. Maybe we'll have a scotch or two, or 7 or 8. Visit the website, BillyCBoxing.com, and click on the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame banner. Okay, coming up on today's show, my thoughts. Before we start the show, I want to give my thoughts, prayers, and condolences to the family and friends of former world champion Greg Haugen, who passed away this past week. He died on February 23rd. I knew Greg, and he had been involved with some events that we did, and he was quite the character. So anybody that's ever met Greg Haugen knows what I mean. He was quite the character. He lost his battle with cancer, and he passed away on February 23rd. The boxing world will definitely miss Greg Haugen. So my thoughts and prayers, and everybody involved with Billy C Boxing goes out to the friends and family of Greg Haugen. Coming up later on today's show, I'm going to give you my full thoughts on the Bivol Beterbiev rematch, along with the results and the rest of the card, and my thoughts about the card overall. And also coming up later on the show, I'm going to give you the breakdown and prediction of this week's Tank Davis against Lamont Roach Jr. fight. But first, I want to get right into it. My main topic today, Floyd Mayweather Jr. Is he the best fighter ever? I've been seeing it and hearing it for a long time, okay? As a matter of fact, Floyd Mayweather Jr. Has named himself the greatest boxer of all time. And he said if he had to just pull his name out of the hat, he actually, which I respect a lot, he actually said that he thought Pernell Whitaker, Sweet Pea Whitaker, would have been the next guy in line. look, the thing is this: in my opinion, Floyd Mayweather is not the greatest fighter of all time. Let me first start off by saying this. I'm going to give a shout out to the people that are in the chat room right now. And if you make a comment, I'll try to glance, but I got a lot of stuff. My man John from LDL TV and Don King, team Don King, I should say, is in there. He's saying, "Uh-oh, Billy C's talking about Floyd." And giving my shout out to Coach and my man Rick, and a late shout out to Love It. She's going to watch the replay. She couldn't make it in here, but listen. Let me backtrack a sec. If anybody's ever been watching, we're in our 22nd year. Look, let's face it. We were pioneer in podcasting, let alone doing a boxing show, and we've been doing it nonstop for this our 22nd year. So if anybody's listened to the show for a while, they kind of know that I'm not the biggest fan of Floyd Mayweather. I've been criticized over the past for being racist just because I didn't like Floyd. I mean, that's how ridiculous it is. But first and foremost, let me start the conversation by giving Floyd some props. Okay. Floyd Mayweather, first of all, was always in shape. And to this day, he's in shape. You see photos of Floyd right now, video of Floyd, whatever. He's in shape. I mean, there's no question about it. He was always in shape, always took care of himself, maybe not the people around him, but he always took care of himself. And one thing I'll say about Floyd, he was consistent in the ring. He always took a professional approach. Look, he made probably more money than most boxers could ever think about making. Made money. I don't know if he still has it all. I know he has a lot. There was rumor a couple weeks ago that he wanted to get involved with being a part owner of the New York Giants, which I don't care. I'm a Jets fan, but look, the props, you got to give Floyd credit. Good businessman, a great marketing strategist, strategist, I should say. He's a salesman, all those things. And when you look at his, boxing ability, listen, I'm not saying that the guy wasn't a great fighter, because he certainly was. Great defensive abilities, good footwork, almost could be considered maybe a track star. And he had hand speed, and his punches were extremely accurate. But I want to say this, boxing has been an evolution, okay? Just like humans, just like we're evolving. It's boxing went through its own evolution, from the beginning times during, if you go back as far as my guy, Tom Molyneux, in the 1800s or before, in England, when boxing was hot in the mid to late 1700s. It was very rough and gruff, and not, even though they called it the sweet science, it wasn't anything the way it is today. Today we have better training, better diet, et cetera, and it's the same as other sports. Football, baseball. For an example, just to give you an example, in 1970. When the American Football Conference or actually at that time it was called the American Football League, and the National Football League merged, there were three players in the newly formed NFL in 1970 who weighed 300 pounds or more. Three. Okay. We're in 2025 right now. And I could probably say that if you're playing on the offensive line specifically in the NFL, you're 300 pounds or close to it. So to me, that's a staggering statistic. The other things, you look at, we hear about Tom Brady being the best ever, right? So you say, okay, the best ever. All right, well, the game has changed. Football has evolved. All right. You can't tackle a quarterback as hard as you used to. You can't follow through. The defensive backs can't nail a receiver before he receives a ball. These are all rules that have changed that quarterbacks or just NFL players in previous generations could not do. You know, they were allowed to tackle and do all these things. So it's hard to compare eras, is my point. You know, Walter Payton, was the all-time rushing leader. Before him, Jim Brown. I mean, he only played for 8 seasons, and during those 8 seasons, he played in 12 and 14 game seasons, and he held the rushing league overall career league rushing yards forever until Walter Payton broke it, and then ultimately Emmitt Smith. And Emmitt Smith played for 15 years in 16 game seasons. So that there's, it's hard to compare the eras, and boxing is no different. You know, when you look at the boxing of yesteryear, fighters fought more often. They didn't always fight the latest and greatest and the best and the top fighters, but they fought more often. Listen, the other reason Floyd Mayweather continues to market himself as the best ever is the 50-0. Now, let's take a look at the 50-0. The 50-0 only pertained, and it was only relevant to the heavyweight division. Rocky Marciano was 49-0 when he retired, and the goal for heavyweights was to get to 49-0 and beat Rocky Marciano's record. The guy that came the closest to it was Larry Holmes, and he missed it. He lost to Michael Spinks. So that was where the 50-0 came from. All right. And when you look at the pound for pound, well, boxing was so heavyweight oriented all those years, and Sugar Ray Robinson came along, they created the pound for pound for him. And then now that's evolved into what we see now. Now, another thing I want to point out, Julio Cesar Chavez was 89-0 with 74 knockouts before he lost his first fight. Now, I'm not going to dissect his record, because the knock on him, he fought taxi cab drivers or whatever. But like Greg Haugen himself told me one day, if you fought your sister 10 times in a row, she's going to beat you one of the times, So, it was, it's hard to just, rally around the 50-0. The other issue that you have to point out when you're looking at the question and whether you want to say that Floyd Mayweather is the best ever is the pool of fighters in yesteryear was so much larger than it is today. I mean, Mike Silva wrote a book, The Rise and Fall of the Arc of Boxing, The Rise and Fall of the Sweet Science. And I forget I read it a while ago, but I forget the exact years he compared, but it was like, I believe in the 40s, and it was somewhere in the 2000s. And the statistics were unbelievable. In the 40s, whatever year he picked, there was over 2,000 licensed professional boxers in the state of New York alone. Okay, 2,000. And in whatever 2000 year, let's say 2010, he compared, there was less than that in the world license. So you got to put that in perspective. The other thing you have to put into perspective is the weight classes. All right. There were 8 weight classes when, in yesteryear. During Floyd's reign, there was at least 17. Now there's at least 18 if you count the bridgerweight. And so that means that a contender, a top 10 contender, which you've heard me talk about a lot on this show, was a number 10 guy in, let's just say, the welterweight division, was a badass fighter. Okay, was a badass fighter. Today in the welterweight division, if you just take the 4 major sanctioning bodies, you could conceivably have 4 different number 10 ranked guys. You could have 40 different top 10 contenders. So I mean, it's ridiculous when you do the comparisons. Listen, you can't blame any fighter on the era in which they fight. And I'm not blaming that on Floyd, but he's using that to his advantage to parade around as the best ever. Now, some other things about Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather, he's fought 8 Hall of Famers in his career to date, and that's with me counting Canelo, assuming Canelo's going to get in. Those Hall of Famers: Diego Corrales, Arturo Gotti, Oscar De La Hoya, Ricky Hatton, Juan Mario Marquez, Sugar Shane Mosley, Miguel Cotto, and Canelo. The other thing is that there were 4 major sanctioning bodies during Floyd Mayweather's career, meaning that for him to fight a so-called contender was pretty easy. All right. He also claims that he beat more world champions than anyone else. Well, if you think about that, because there's 4 sanctioning bodies and because there's so many different contenders, everybody's a champion. For example, in my opinion, Sugar Ray Robinson was the best fighter ever. And just to compare, Sugar Ray Robinson, his record, now we all know that Floyd Mayweather's record was 50-0. All right, with 27 knockouts. That's his career that he's banking on to be classified as the best ever. All right. Sugar Ray Robinson had 174 wins, 19 losses, and 6 draws. Of his 174 wins, 109 were knockouts. A lot of people that I have this discussion with say, well, look, he's got double-digit losses, almost 20 losses. But it's hard to compare when you look at the total amount of fights and the level of opposition. You want to talk about Hall of Famers that Sugar Ray Robinson met? We just said that Floyd Mayweather met 8, and that's assuming one of them is going to get in. He's not in yet, and that's Canelo. And Sugar Ray Robinson has fought 12 current Hall of Famers. And check out the names. Sammy Engot, he fought him twice. So not only did he fight 12, he fought and beat this guy twice. All right. Fritzy Zivik, all right, another Hall of Famer, fought him and beat him twice. Jake LaMotta, he fought 6 times. He was 5-1 against Jake LaMotta. All right. Henry Armstrong, he's another guy that you could make the argument is the best ever. He fought and beat him. Kid Gavilan, I got his trunks right over there. He fought him twice and beat him twice. Bobo Olsen. Fought him 4 times, beat him all 4 times, beat Kid Gavilan twice. Randy Turpin, he fought twice. He won 1 and he lost 1. Rocky Graziano, he fought and beat. He fought Joey Maxim. These are all Hall of Famers. Now, he lost to Joey Maxim, but that was him later in his career, and he was moving up to light heavyweight. He fought Gene Fullmer 4 times, and Gene Fullmer actually got the best of him. Gene Fullmer, if you recall, is a fighter that I thought fought in one of the most brutal fights ever when he fought when Gene Fullmer and Benny Kid Paret fought. Sal, the late, great Sal Rocky Senecola, and I called that fight. We replayed it in front of a live audience and recalled that fight if it was as it was live. And that was Hearns Hagler for 10 rounds. And believe me, that's the fight that killed Benny Kid Paret, because he fought 3 weeks later and ended up dying, after that fight. Carmen Basilio, he fought and split with him. Joey Gardiello, he fought and actually lost. This was one of his last fights of his career. But he fought during a time when there was 1 world champion and 8 weight classes, meaning there was only 1 world champion per 8 divisions. Now, think about that for a second as we analyze Floyd Mayweather being the best ever or not. All right, think about that. There was a welterweight that 147 pounds, and then the next weight class was middleweight, 160. There was no junior middleweight. There was no super welterweight, which is the same as junior middleweight. It wasn't a junior welterweight. There was 1. There was 8. So I think that's something to consider. And then there's another thing to consider. There's other fighters. I mentioned Henry Armstrong, 149 wins, 21 losses, and 10 draws. 99 of his wins He won by knockout, and of the 21 losses, he was only stopped twice. I mean, against this upper echelon of talent, and Harry Greb is a guy that a lot of people, including myself, forget about when you're talking about all-time greats. But here's a cat that was 265 wins, 19 losses, and 17 draws. And oh, by the way, his last fight was in 1926 at the ripe old age of 32. And by the way, he was blind in one eye. Now, if you punch him up and look, you're going to see on BoxRec that it shows 109 wins with 9 losses and 3 draws with 50 knockouts. Let me explain to you why. Because during that era, there was a time when boxing was actually illegal. So they would render what they called newspaper decisions. And those decisions would vary from whoever was, covering the fight. Boxing is subjective. So if my fighter's from New York and he's fighting a Chicago fighter, and I'm a writer from New York and I'm sitting next to a Chicago writer, his view of the fight might be different than mine, and that's something you have to take into consideration, in my opinion. Now, when you look at Floyd Mayweather's record, which, don't get me wrong, this isn't that I'm not saying it's not, a bad record, but when you look at him, his first 15 fights were all against opponents that, well, they were nothing special. They were your typical, let's get our guy to 15-0, the way they still do it today. I mean, his first real test was against Gustavo Coelho back in 1998, and Floyd won a unanimous decision. He had a good win after that against Tony Pep. He won a 10-round decision against him. And then Gennaro Hernandez was his first title in 1998, another good win. He also beat Angel Manfredi, which was a good win. He also, Carlos Guarena, Gregorio Vargas, Emmanuel Augustus, which didn't have an impressive record, but he was a tough one. I'm giving him credit for all these wins. The Diego Corrales fight, which, a lot of people, let me just finish. You had Jose Luis Castillo fights. A lot of people thought he lost his first fight, but then he had a rematch, one of his few rematches. And in my opinion, the cherry picking started after that fight. They did do the rematch. But after that, he fought Victor Sosha. He fought Philip Nadeau, DeMarcus Chop Chop Corley, Henry Brussels, Arturo Gotti. He was way bigger. He was way better than Brussels. It wasn't that great of a matchup. His fight against Zab Judah, that was one of Judah's worst performances. Was it Judah having a bad night, or was it Floyd just, being that good? Carlos Baldomir, when he won that title, that was actually the weakest opponent he could have fought in that division. He fought Oscar De La Hoya in 2007. Most people thought he won the fight. His corner, Oscar De La Hoya's corner, thought that he was so far ahead. It was the famous telling him to take his foot off the gas and coast for the last couple of rounds, and it ultimately cost Oscar the fight. He fought Ricky Hatton in 2007. Ricky was way smaller, moving up in weight. Fought Juan Manuel Marquez after Marquez had been in countless wars. Sugar Shane Mosley, he fought 2 years later than 4 years later than I thought he did. He fought Victor Ortiz with the famous sucker punch. I call it a sucker punch. Clearly, I called that a sucker punch. Canelo Alvarez was a big win, but he fought him at the right time. I'm not going to take that away from him. He was smart. Marcos Maidana, the first fight, a lot of people thought Floyd lost that fight. The judges didn't, but most of the public did. He beat him convincingly in the second one. As far as I know, those were the only 2 fights he had rematches with. Manny Pacquiao, that fight took place 5 years too late, and all the Pacquiao fans still swear that Pacquiao won that fight. I don't know about that, but Pacquiao wasn't 100%. We all know Floyd would have never stepped in that ring if he wasn't 100%. He fought Andre Berto after that, who was, no disrespect to Andre, he was washed up and finished by that time in 2015. Then for his 50th win was the joke of all jokes, Conor McGregor. And this is what bothers me the most about Conor McGregor, the fight with Conor McGregor. You know, I don't know if you guys recall, but the Nevada State Athletic Commission, there was a Triple G fight that was proposed against Jaime Munguia, and the Nevada State Athletic Commission wouldn't approve the fight. And at the time, Munguia was, I believe, 22-0 or something like that. And they said he didn't have enough experience to fight a quality fighter like Triple G. And then they go and approve Conor McGregor, who never stepped foot in a boxing ring, making his pro debut, to hand Mayweather his 50th win. To me, that was a travesty in the sport of boxing. There's so many other fighters that, in my opinion, are better or should be regarded as being better than Floyd Mayweather. I already mentioned, in my opinion, the best ever, in my opinion, is Sugar Ray Robinson. I gave you the reasons why, talent-wise. Now, he engaged. When people talk to me about Hall of Fame, right? When fighters get in the Hall of Fame, I remember when Arturo Gatti got in. People were saying, "Oh, why did Arturo Gatti get in? He's not good. He wasn't good enough to be a Hall of Famer." Well, in my opinion, some of the credentials to be considered for a Hall of Fame as a fighter, the truth of the matter is not only do you have to have, fought some good opposition and have, a successful record and been a champion and all this stuff. What did you bring to boxing? Did you bring something to boxing? Did you bring something positive to the sport of boxing? And I believe Arturo Gatti did. And I always said I thought that Arturo Gatti deserved to get in. Just like I feel, the question now is with Vinny Pazienza, does he deserve to get in? And, the question is, yes, because, he brought something to the sport of boxing as well, something positive. And, I think that, that has to be taken into consideration. And when you're talking about all-time greatness, I believe that same type of criteria has to be brought in to the conversation. And, when you're a champion and when you're considered a great fighter, you have to challenge yourself. These guys that I believe should be considered the best ever. And I believe, in my opinion, it's Sugar Ray Robinson, but I feel you could make a strong argument for Harry Greb, who had wins over Maxie Rosenblum, Mickey Walker, Tiger Flowers, Tommy Loughran, fought Gene Tunney a bunch of times, winning, losing, drawing, having newspaper decisions, real decisions, fought Tommy Burns, Tommy Gibbons, Kid Norfolk, battling Levinsky, Leah Hook, Billy Miskey, Jack Dillon. These were all great fighters of the time. I know half of the people watching may never have heard of them, but they were all the top-notch fighters of the time, and most of them are in the Hall of Fame. Most of them, there was a time when fighters didn't even get a shot at a world title until they had 50 fights under their belt. And, here's a guy that's claiming that he's the best ever because he's 50-0. I believe that Hagler, Leonard, Roberto Duran, Tommy Hearns, Julio Cesar Chavez, if they all fought Floyd Mayweather Jr., I don't have a crystal ball and I don't have a time machine, but I think that if Floyd Mayweather Jr. fought in that era, he wouldn't have beat any one of those guys, not any one of them, And then if you're looking at all-time greats, in addition to those names I just named, don't forget about, Benny Leonard was actually a boxer before boxers. He was a trash talker before trash talkers. Then you got guys like Archie Moore, Ezra Charles, Bernard Hopkins, of course, Muhammad Ali, Mickey Walker, Charlie Burley, Barney Ross. I think in the lightweight division would have given Floyd all he could handle. Holman Williams, Sam Langford, Lou Ambers. I mean, these are all fighters that I feel, are ahead of him on the all-time great list. As a matter of fact, I have Floyd Mayweather on my all-time great list at number 25. I know people are going to get mad at that. And I'll tell you another thing that's going to piss people off even more. I have Manny Pacquiao at number 23, even though Floyd beat him. And why? Why, you ask? Because Manny Pacquiao was more exciting in the ring. He fought tougher opposition. He fought his toughest opposition multiple times. Floyd could have, I could be singing a different tune about Floyd if he did a couple of things. If he challenged himself a little more, like, he had an opportunity to fight Triple G. And everybody said, "Oh no, he can't. He's too small. He's too small." He wasn't too small. He nobody could move up and down in weight like Floyd. But he didn't fight him. Antonio Margarito, in his heyday. Floyd didn't fight him, and one of the reasons was he was knocking all these people out. Okay, granted, we found out that he was putting cement in his gloves, but that's besides the point. We found that afterwards. How about Vernon Forrest? Floyd could have fought Vernon Forrest. Never fought Timothy Bradley. That's another fight he could have had. Costa Tszyu, he could have fought him. Never fought him. I mean, if he wanted to really show his greatness, he could have fought a Bernard Hopkins or a Kelly Pavlik when Kelly Pavlik was at his top, maybe at 154, 160 pounds. They could have fought. Great fighters do great things. Great fighters challenge themselves. It's hard for me to give the accolades to Floyd Mayweather Jr. when he seemingly has taken the easiest way out, in my opinion. Look, the truth of the matter is Floyd has an impressive record. Is he the best ever? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. In my opinion, Sugar Ray Robinson's the best ever. Some comments from you guys. We got my man Coach. Well, my man Coach says, well, first, my man David Sullivan's in there. He says Paul Spadafora was 49-1, was an avoided boxer. He beat the crap out of Mayweather in sparring. Gotti avoided him. He belongs in the Hall of Fame. I think Spadafora's antics outside the ring is preventing that, which isn't fair. But Coach says Floyd winning alphabet titles doesn't mean you could become branded as an elite fighter by anyone. No, listen, I agree. All those things. I have a comment that was emailed to me from my man Matt. He says, in my opinion, Sugar Ray Robinson is the best ever all time. He feels Muhammad Ali is the best heavyweight of all time. He says Ali was the biggest star of all time, as well as being the most watched by billions of people. The biggest star, I guess you would say Muhammad Ali, but you'd have to say Mike Tyson was a big star as well and continues to be. He feels, Matt says, Floyd Mayweather is the highest earner. That's a rightful crown he deserves. I can't disagree with you there. As a matter of fact, I saw something on social media today, as a matter of fact, that Floyd, it seems like he's trying to get a fight with what's his face there, the YouTuber Paul. I'm going blank. But anyway, I mean, to fight Jake Paul, it's not Paul, it's Jake. To fight Jake Paul, it's a cash out. Listen, does anybody think? Look, I'm telling you, Floyd Mayweather is not the best ever, but I'm not saying he's a garbage fighter. It is, he's a great fighter. He's one of the best in his era, and you can't assume. I'll never forget when people were clamoring for Floyd to fight Triple G. I'll never forget what came out of the Mayweather camp. What came out of the Mayweather camp is, we know we can beat Triple G, so why should we fight him? I mean, what kind of bullshit response is that? I mean, boxing, you got to prove it in the ring. One of the things that Floyd did, in my opinion, that's negative to the sport of boxing was his own success. And what I mean by that is all the young fighters today try to emulate Floyd Mayweather Jr. and his financial success and his way to being undefeated. Tank Davis is fighting this weekend, and I saw a comment made by Tank Davis several weeks back that he feels he might retire after this fight because he feels he's proved everything that he needs. He's done everything he can do in the sport. That's a crock of shit. He hasn't done anything. I'm going to break down that fight coming up in a little bit, but I mean, listen, I love Tank Davis, and I think he's an extremely talented fighter. As a matter of fact, I'd love to see him fight Shakur Stevenson because, as talented as I think Shakur is with his defensive ability, he can't crack an egg. And I think he'll get caught by the hand speed of Tank Davis, and I don't think Shakur beats Tank Davis, but that's a whole nother story. The bottom line, in my opinion, is that Floyd Mayweather was an extremely good fighter during his time. And you can make an argument that, you know, I don't agree, but some people can make the argument that he was the best fighter of his era. I still think Manny Pacquiao was, even though Manny had some losses. I just thought that Manny was more exciting to watch. He was more aggressive. He challenged himself. His resume was much more impressive than Floyd's. Floyd's claim to fame is, you know, the 50-0, which it shouldn't be, and the other one is, you know, the most recent one he's parading around is that he's fought and beat more world title holders than anyone else. Well, when everybody's a champion, that's kind of easy to do, you would think, but coach is saying some of the fighters Mayweather avoided Margarito, which I said, oh, Paul Williams, yeah, Costazu, Sergio Martinez, Pacquiao when he was in his prime, Amir Khan, Winky Wright. I was thinking of Winky Wright. Sean Porter would have been a decent fight. Keith Thurman, I don't want to give him the accolades. Errol Spence, we can't really say that, Coach. I disagree because Errol came afterwards. Floyd was already done. He was looking for, easy ways out. But the Pacquiao fight should have taken place way sooner. But I was thinking about Winky Wright against Floyd Mayweather, and wouldn't have that been a boring fight? I mean, listen, Winky Wright was a great fighter, but he was a defensive master himself. I mean, somebody would have had to throw a punch in that fight, but John from LDL TV saying Floyd was the most successful heel in boxing. People to see him lose, not win. This is true, but the thing is that he has so many diehard fans that have bought into all his propaganda, because that's what I'll call it. That his most loyal fans are the ones that Floyd fleeces the most. They're the ones that stick by him. I'll never forget, John. You'll remember. We did the Conor McGregor, Manny Pacquiao live event with Sal Rocky Senacola. We did a live broadcast, not of the fight, but in between rounds, and I was shocked at how many people were in that place, rooting and believing in their heart of hearts that Conor McGregor was going to beat Floyd. We all laughed. All the boxing people were laughing, going, "There's no way Conor's going to win." But there was money. They were betting money. I'm trying to remember. One of the guys, I think one of the pizza makers or something that was there, was taking all bets that Conor was going to win that fight. So I mean, yeah, that's a great point that that John just made. Floyd Mayweather was the fighter everyone loved to hate, and he sold those pay-per-views. There's no question about it. I look, we got to give him credit for his skill set, but I've always said that, and I've had people agree and I've had people disagree, but if he would have fought his own father, if you could go back and have Floyd Sr. versus Floyd Jr. in the 80s, I would have put my money on Sr., and I'll tell you why. They both had the same defensive skill. And I believe Senior packed a more powerful punch, and he was willing to take chances. I think he would have beat Junior. I really do. You know, So I mean, that's my thought there. Another thing is when you look at Floyd, and like I said earlier, his fight with um, first of all, before he got rid of Top Rank, and let's give credit where credit's due, Floyd was an exciting fighter. He went in for the kill. He displayed not only his defense, but he displayed his hand speed, his aggressiveness, the willingness to go in there. But I believe that first fight was with Jose Luis Castillo changed Floyd, and he became the guy that was like, why do I want to take a risk? I'm not going to do anything more than I have to win the fight and collect my paycheck. And in a sense, he kind of, yes, he made the smart move for himself financially, physically, mentally, but he screwed boxing because I've said this time and time again. I don't think we ever saw the best Floyd Mayweather Jr. I don't think we were ever treated to what we could have seen because of Floyd's lack of commitment to proving that he was the best by fighting the best and by challenging himself. Every fight that he took with the least amount of risk and the most reward, which, from a business perspective, I'm not going to disagree. The fighter that comes to mind most of all, and it's sad because a lot of people today have forgotten, but there was a fighter, in my opinion, who could have gone down as being, if not the best ever, definitely top 5. But the same thing happened to him that happened to Floyd when Floyd fought Castillo, and that's Hector Macho Camacho. Hector Macho Camacho, in the beginning of his career, had it all. He had charisma, something Floyd, John was right. Floyd had that, I hate you, everybody hates him. He didn't really have he didn't have charisma. He certainly didn't, and still doesn't to this day, have class. Hector Camacho had charisma, and Hector Camacho was a showman. And this kid was unbelievable. You want to see a fighter that was great, you go back and watch Hector Macho Camacho's fights prior to Edwin Rosario, because he displayed it all. He went in for the kill. You couldn't hit him. His hand speed was like, watching Flash Gordon run across the football field. I mean, this guy was phenomenal. And then he stepped in the ring with Edwin Rosario, and Rosario beat the shit out of him, is what he did. Hector won that fight in a controversial decision, similar to the 2 fights that Floyd won, 3 fights that Floyd won controversially. The first Castillo fight, the first Maidana fight, and the Oscar De La Hoya fight. And he never granted Oscar a rematch. But after that, Camacho became what Floyd became, a safety-first fighter. And then to make it even worse for Camacho, he just hung on too long. And, a lot of people that saw Hector Camacho saw Hector after Edwin Rosario and never really thought of him as being anything special. But trust me, he was an extremely special fighter. And I talk about him in the same breath as I am with Floyd Mayweather. So in a nutshell, I feel that Floyd has benefited from, the way what we've learned. First of all, he's benefited from more weight classes, less fighters in these that he had to contend with. Okay, more champions because it was easier to get a belt. Better training techniques, better nutritional knowledge, and being kind of safety first. I really believe that, all of those, even though I said earlier that you can't blame a fighter for fighting in the era, I do believe that you do have to take in consideration what the other fighters overcame. And I think the bottom line, the amount of fights and the fact, I mean, there's guys that Sugar Ray Robinson fought that had records just 75 wins and 3 losses, or 109 wins and 11 losses, and these guys aren't even in the Hall of Fame. I mean, today a fighter like Floyd is parading around his 50 fights as this is some great achievement. I just mentioned Julio Cesar Chavez had 89 before he lost his first fight. So yeah, in my opinion, Floyd Mayweather clearly is not the best ever. I think he was an all-time great. I think he's a justifiable Hall of Famer. I think that he was one of the, if not the best fighter of his era, and he was very successful in the financial arena. With all that said, in my opinion, Sugar Ray Robinson was the best fighter ever, and I think that if somebody wanted to argue with me, the only other names that you could mention is Harry Greb and Henry Armstrong as being 2 other fighters that you could make that argument with the best ever. And I'm going to tell you something right now. Terrence Crawford, in my opinion, would have beat Floyd Mayweather. I think Terrence Crawford is better than Floyd was. I'm sorry, I just do. He's got that it factor. He goes after it. He's got that mean streak that Floyd does not have. Floyd has his safety first. So yeah, that's my opinion there. If you have some comments that you want to fill me in on, that makes that you could tell me I'm wrong, just drop me an email, Billy@TalkinBoxing. That's TalkinBoxing.com. I have one. I'm going to read this other email from Matt. He said, I wanted to hear your thoughts on Joe Parker. I've watched his career since the early days, and the way he built his career after losing a few times is remarkable. I would dare say he built his title shot the Billy C way. Joseph Parker is a class act. He was a former champion, and I can't say enough good things about him myself. So I think Joseph Parker is a great fighter, and which leads me into this right now. Dmitry Bivol beat Artur Beterbiev last week on a great card. Bivol, the scores were 116, 112, 115, 113 for Bivol, and one judge had it 114, 114. I want to say this, in both of the fights, to me, and I said this last week, the truth of the matter is that the fight was the exact same as the first fight, in my opinion. And I said that it was going to pick up. Round 1 was going to be round 13. And in my opinion, it was. I do believe that Bivol was a little more aggressive in this fight. But make no mistake, it could have gone either way. As a matter of fact, on my scorecard, all right, now look, of the 12 rounds, I had 6 rounds that I marked as extremely close, could have gone either way. All right. And that was the first 4 rounds. I gave the first round of Beterbiev because I thought he landed the harder punches. I gave Bivol the second round. I gave Beterbiev the third and fourth rounds because I thought he landed the harder punches. At the end of the fight, my scorecard was 115, 113 in favor of Beterbiev. Now, like I said, all those rounds were close. So I'm not saying it was a robbery. It was just the way I saw it. I saw, more substantial punches being landed. The punch statistics are out of control. These guys that are calling fights right now are terrible because they use these punch stats as if it's a real stat. It's not a real stat. It's not a real stat. It's a subjective stat. I've talked about this many, many times on this show. It's a subjective stat. So how are you calling a fight based on that? you're taking somebody's subjective opinion, depending upon where they're located around that ring, scoring a fight, and you're referring to it as if it's, factual, fact. I don't know if that's a word, but whatever. In football, you run the ball, 10 times, you gain 100 yards. It's math. You're averaging 10 yards a carry. In baseball, you get up 10 times and you get a hit 5 times, you're batting 500. It's math. It's simple. Boxing's not like that. Okay, so to even talk about the landing this shot and this percentage and that percentage during the fight is bullshit. And it's very hard to watch a fight when that's all you got. And worse than that, when you have a commentator that's yelling and screaming at you. So the fight was extremely entertaining. It was two fighters that are equally skilled. I think the age caught up with Beterbiev, and I do believe there's going to be a third fight. And I say that because I don't think that in either fight you had a decisive winner on either one. Bivol was upset after the first fight, thought he won it. Beterbiev was upset after the last fight because he thought he won it. I think that if they have a third fight, I think it's going to lean towards Bivol only because the more time Beterbiev waits, the older he gets and he's losing a step. I do believe there'll be a third fight because I think both of these guys will be able to make a lot of money fighting again. The other fight was an impressive fight. We were just talking about Joseph Parker. He knocked out Bacoli in 2 rounds, 2 minutes and 17 seconds of the second round. It was a shot to the top of the head where putting Martin Bacoli in Dream Street. Look, Martin Bacoli was a great story, and it was great that Turkey Al-Rashid was able to get him so quickly. And kudos to Bacoli for taking the fight. Okay. But I wasn't convinced that Bacoli was the next great thing in the heavyweight division. He had a good fight in his previous fight. But it is what it is, and I don't think his career is over by any stretch of the imagination. I think he's a dangerous opponent because of his power. But I think, he fights an upper echelon fighter like Joseph Parker or any other upper echelon fighter, and the same result is going to happen. Shakur Stevenson took care of Josh Padley to improve to 23-0. Look, Shakur Stevenson looked good like he should have. And he got the stoppage. But the truth of the matter is I didn't think that I'm not impressed with him. I'm just not. I'm not impressed with Stevenson because Stevenson is he was stopped. Yeah, 9th round stoppage. The corner threw in the towel. But the thing is with him, yes, he's got hand speed. Yes, he's got great defensive prowess. He's got good footwork. If he steps in the ring with Tank Davis is going to break his jaw. I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. Shakur Stevenson, with his mouth open during the fight, is going to get caught by a powerful, speedy fighter like Tank Davis, and his jaw will get broken, guaranteed. I'd put money on it. Let's see. We got a comment. I'm trying to keep up with the comments, but Albert says Jake Paul would never be at where he's at now if it wasn't for Mayweather. Mayweather is the expert defense or the best at fighting defense and offense with manipulating boxing to become his own business. Well, Jake Paul is a good promoter. All right. We can't talk about Jake Paul and Floyd Mayweather in terms of boxing talent in the same discussion, Albert. But as a businessman, okay, I see your point. But Floyd was not the best. I mean, my topic today is, is he the best ever? No, and he wasn't even the best defensive fighter ever. Coach made some great points earlier about some defensive fighters that were better than him, and the Nicolino Loche was regarded one of the best. I mean, Willie Pep, James Toney was hard to hit, and of course Pernell Sweet Pea Whitaker. So yeah, listen, Mayweather did great. Mayweather did great. I would love to be able to just take the change out of his couch, but the truth of the matter is he's not the best ever. That's my only point. I'm not saying that he wasn't a great fighter. He's an all-time great. There's no question about it, but he's not the best ever. In my favorite fight of the night, well, before we get to that, Carlos Adames, did he freaking get robbed in this fight or what? I mean, Hamaz Shiraz, this fight ended in a draw. One judge had it 115, 114 for Shiraz. One had it 118, 110 for Adames, and one had it even at 114, 114. The 118, 110 for Adames is the most logical score, to be honest with you. This fight wasn't close. Okay, so he broke his hand during the fight. I don't want to hear excuses. I really don't. That's the nature of the game. If you broke your hand, you can't compete. Stop the fight. I've always said that, Floyd Mayweather, when Floyd Mayweather fought Manny Pacquiao, Manny Pacquiao started complaining about his shoulder wasn't right and this and that. Well, guess what? Then you shouldn't have fought. And when they said, why did you fight? He said, well, I didn't want to let the fans down. Well, you know what? Screw the fans. Floyd, you think Floyd Mayweather for a second would have stepped in that ring if he wasn't 100% against Manny Pacquiao? Floyd Mayweather, if he had an ingrown toenail, wouldn't have fought. All right? I mean, you have to be at your best when you're trying to fight the best. End of story. And Adames should have won that fight. There's no way it should have been a majority draw or a draw, however it ended. But Shiraz was protected in that fight. That was a travesty, that score. Virgil Ortiz impressed me against Israel Madrimov by winning that fight. 117, 111, 115, 113 twice. He showed me some patience, and he was able to win on the scorecards. Madrimov never really got going in that fight, to be honest with you. But the fight in the night to me was, I love this guy, Ajit Kabiel, who knocked out Zhilei Zhang to improve to 26-0 with 18 knockouts. The game plan for this fight was phenomenal. And, I've said about Zhilei Zhang, he was another Martin Bacoli who shot to the top. He had a good performance. Next thing you know, he's this big giant guy that's in the ring, but he was so slow. And, you get in there, this kid, Ajit Kabiel, nobody's going to want to fight him. He's conditioned, he can punch, and he gets up when he gets knocked down, because he's done that a couple of times. Callum Smith, I predicted this fight. What a great performance by him. He beat Joshua Butasi to improve to 31-2 with 22 knockouts. Butasi loses for only the first time in his career, 19-1. Credit to Butasi for the chin and sticking with that fight. 119, 110, which was a joke score. 115, 113, 116, 112. The 116, 112, 115, 113 was realistic. The 119, 110, Ray Charles was that judge. But all in all, the card was really good. They kept billing it as the greatest card ever. I don't know if I want to give it that accolade yet. It certainly was a great card, and it was certainly one of the best cards of late. But I want to give kudos to Thomas Triber. Triber was the guy that did all the hard work, and then they hand the mic to Michael Buffer for the main events. They had so many. How much does Turkey Al-Rashid just loves to spend money? Because think of how many people there was. Sean Porter was there. Sergio Mora, Todd Grisham, Darren Barker, Chris Mannix. That chick, Emily Austin, they threw in Lawrence Oakley. There was a bunch of other people that came in, that they kept being part of the show, and my big question was, if it was the greatest show in history, which they were trying to, while they were trying to bill it, If it was the greatest show in history, why did they move it to a smaller venue? It was to a smaller venue next door called the Last Crescendo. Look, it was a great card. There's no question about it. And I can't wait for the next Riyadh season card. So speaking about the next, here's the next thing I want to talk about, which is the last thing I'm going to talk about today, and that's the fight against Gervonta Davis, Tank Davis, if you will, and Lamont Roach. This fight's taking place Saturday night. It's a PBC event, so they're charging you for it, and they shouldn't. All right. I mean, no disrespect, but Tank Davis, he's 30-0 with 28 knockouts. He's ranked number one by the computer rankings. He's the WBA World Lightweight Champion. The computer ranks him at number one, and so does Ring Magazine. He's 30 years old, 5 foot 5.5 southpaw with a 67.5-inch reach, 93.3% KO percentage. Are you kidding me, Coach? Coach is telling me they're trying to charge $79. You see, this is the PBC at its finest. I will not buy it. I will not give those clowns a penny. And I love Tank Davis. All right. He beat, his best wins. He beat a weight drained Ryan Garcia in April 23. I feel his best 2 wins of his career was stopping Leo Santa Cruz in October of 2020 and stopping Yuriorkis Gamboa in 2019. He's also got wins over Pitbull Cruz, Mario Barros, Leon Walsh, Hugo Ruiz, Jose Pedraza, and Cristobal Cruz. Cristobal Cruz was a really good fighter. Don't go by his record. Now he steps in the ring with Lamont Roach, who's got an impressive record, 25 wins, 1 knockout, with only 10 of his wins coming by knockout. He's 1 year younger. Around this, he's about a little less than 2 inches taller at 5'7". And he actually has a longer reach at 68 inch reach. Here's the thing, and this is my knock on Tank Davis. Tank Davis is saying that he's done everything he can do in boxing. He's thinking about hanging it up. Here's the truth: Gervonta Davis shouldn't even be fighting this guy. All right, he's ranked number 16 in the world at a lower weight division, not even at lightweight, at super featherweight. He's not rated in any of the sanctioning bodies at either junior lightweight or lightweight. Now, the ring happens to have him ranked at number 4 at junior lightweight. His best fights as a pro was his best fighter as a pro that he fought was against Jamel Herring, and he lost the unanimous decision in 2019. His best wins, he beat Angel Rodriguez in July of 2022, and I'll give him credit for his last fight, but he fought Fergal McCrory. He stopped him in the 8th round in June of last year. Look, this isn't going to be a competitive fight at all, and what can I say? My prediction, it's a layup. Gervonta Tank Davis will destroy this guy. I'm disappointed that Tank Davis is even fighting him, to be honest with you. Anybody that says that he's done it all in boxing and doesn't have the resume to prove it, and then picks a very Floyd Mayweather-esque opponent, and then he's going to brag about him knocking him out, because he will knock him out. Tank Davis will win by knockout. Tank Davis needs, if he wants to say that he's an all-time great or an upper echelon fighter, he needs to fight Shakur Stevenson, because that's the guy in the lightweight division that makes the most sense financially for both of them. I don't think Lomachenko is going to come back. And if he does, I think he shouldn't, because he's a little too old at this point, and he's not into it. If he comes back, it's going to be for a payday, and it's going to be in Saudi Arabia. But anyway, hey, listen, next week we have a great topic, and I don't think you're going to want to miss this one. There's been a lot of talk about going back to 15 rounds instead of 12 rounds for championship fights. And it's compelling, the argument for both sides. and it's been being discussed. And it's not more than just, you know, jibber jabber. It seems like it's gaining some momentum. And a lot of fighters that I've talked to support it. So we're going to talk about that next week, and we're going to have Alex Papali will be with me, and I wanted to get Mariano Agmi back on. He's a knowledgeable guy. I told you he's with CES Boxing. He was with us last week, and I wanted to get him back on to give us his thoughts, and he's got some opinions about it. I've reached out to him, and he's agreed to come on. So next week. We'll be talking about should they return to 15 rounds for championship fights. Listen, boys and girls, I appreciate you joining us today. And if you have some strong feelings against how I felt about Floyd, just drop me an email, man, and I'll read it next week, and we'll go from there. But all I could say is this: make sure you tune in next week, same bat time, same bat channel. Until then, I'll leave you with this.